In Vietnam, danger rarely announced itself with the roar of gunfire. It hid beneath footprints, slept inside doorways, and waited silently in the shade of the jungle canopy. For thousands of soldiers, the Vietnam War wasn't just about epic battles. It was an endless, grinding tension. Every step forward was measured, every movement questioned. In this landscape, a new kind of weapon came to dominate the conflict, transforming the very ground they walked on into a relentless, unseen enemy. This was the war of the booby trap. For the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army, facing a military superpower, booby traps were a strategic equalizer. They lacked the heavy armor, air power, and vast resources of their opponents. So, they relied on what they had in abundance: patience, ingenuity, and an intimate knowledge of the land. These deadly devices were astonishingly cheap to build, often crafted from scavenged scrap metal, unexploded ordnance, and the natural materials of the jungle itself. Yet, the damage they inflicted was completely disproportionate to their cost. But their real power wasn't just physical. It was psychological. Booby traps were designed to drain morale. A single wounded soldier could bring an entire patrol to a grinding halt. He would need immediate medical attention, evacuation, and protection, tying up manpower and resources. The impact of one small, hidden device would ripple outwards, multiplying its effect far beyond the initial blast or injury. It sowed fear and suspicion, turning every soldier's mind against the environment itself. Among the most common and infamous devices were the punji stick traps. Simple, yet brutally effective. These were sharpened bamboo or wooden stakes, sometimes fire-hardened to a needle-like point. They were hidden in camouflaged pits dug along well-worn trails, in the muddy bottoms of rice paddies, and even just outside the perimeter of American bases. To make them even more sinister, the stakes were often deliberately contaminated with filth or poison to guarantee a nasty infection if the initial wound was indeed bad enough. The goal wasn't always to kill, but to cripple. A wounded soldier was a far greater logistical burden than a dead one. These pits varied in designs and were shallow, just deep enough to pierce a boot and a foot, while others were deep, designed to impale a man up to his waist. Then there were the tripwires, the invisible triggers of the jungle. Deceptively simple, they were lethally effective. A fine wire, almost impossible to see, would be stretched taut just inches above the ground, across a narrow path, in a bunker entrance, or across a village doorway. A slight touch was all it took. The wire could be connected to anything from a simple hand grenade with the pin pulled to a repurposed mortar round or a buried artillery shell. Some traps, known as toe poppers, were small explosive charges designed to detonate at foot or leg level, while others were angled upwards to maximize shrapnel injuries to the torso and face. The simple act of opening a door, lifting a box, or even picking up a seemingly discarded helmet could unleash sudden, violent destruction. One of the most ironic and deadly tactics was turning American firepower against itself. The sheer volume of munitions dropped from the air and fired from artillery meant that the landscape was littered with unexploded bombs and shells. For the Viet Cong, these were a valuable resource. They would carefully dig up these heavy explosives, rig them with new detonators, and rebury them under trails or roads. The resulting blast was devastating, capable of wiping out an entire patrol or obliterating a vehicle. The very weapons meant to ensure American dominance were recycled into the guerrillas' arsenal. The jungle itself was weaponized through spring-loaded traps. Young, flexible saplings would be bent back under extreme tension, held in place by a tripwire. When a soldier disturbed the wire, the sapling would be released, snapping forward with incredible force. At the end of it could be a cluster of sharpened bamboo stakes or a metal spike, aimed to strike a soldier at chest or head height. These were particularly effective on the narrow jungle paths that forced troops to move in single file. A similar concept was the whip trap or the swinging log, rigged to swing down from above, causing massive blunt force trauma. It was a constant reminder that the threat wasn't just underfoot. It was everywhere, in all three dimensions. This idea of overhead danger was perfected in falling weight traps. Heavy logs, sometimes embedded with spikes, or baskets filled with rocks, would be suspended high in the trees above a trail. Linked to a tripwire below, they would be released to fall on anyone passing underneath. It was a primitive but terrifyingly effective method, using gravity as the primary weapon. The psychological warfare extended into the routines of daily life. Booby traps were hidden in the most mundane, harmless-looking objects. A radio left by the side of a trail, a container of food, an abandoned weapon, all could be bait. Even the bodies of fallen soldiers, both friend and foe, could be rigged with explosives, designed to detonate when moved. This tactic was particularly cruel. Exploiting the natural human impulse to care for the dead and wounded, it forced soldiers to second-guess every single interaction with their surroundings, creating a state of perpetual anxiety. Nowhere was this more true than in the claustrophobic confines of the tunnel systems. The vast underground networks of the Viet Cong were not just shelters. They were defensive fortresses, layered with deadly traps. Soldiers, known as tunnel rats, tasked with clearing these subterranean mazes, faced a unique kind of hell. The narrow passages, concealed spike pits, false floors designed to collapse, and dead-end chambers that were easy to seal off. Grenades, punji stakes, and explosives were strategically placed to punish any intruder. This was warfare in its most primal form, fought in darkness and suffocating confinement, where every corner could hide a lethal surprise. Ultimately, the impact of booby traps went far beyond the physical casualties they inflicted, which were already significant. Their true power was psychological. Patrols were forced to move at a snail's pace, every step probed and checked. Confidence was eroded. The vibrant, living jungle was transformed into a hostile, menacing entity. The tension was constant, a quiet hum of fear that never went away. Even after the war officially ended, these hidden weapons lingered. For decades, unexploded bombs and forgotten traps have continued to claim victims among farmers, children, and the brave deminers working to clear the land. They are a lasting, deadly legacy of the conflict. The booby traps of Vietnam came to define the very character of the war, a brutal struggle where ingenuity, patience, and psychological pressure often proved just as powerful as overwhelming brute force. The jungle, once it was armed, never truly disarmed. Thanks for watching. If you found this look into the hidden side of warfare interesting, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next one.